So, welcome back, China World Report viewers. It's my distinct pleasure to once again welcome Mr. Lawrence Pih for another interview where he will elucidate some of the points regarding to the horrors that have happened recently with regards to Gaza, giving us a historical overview as well as an opinion as to how this conflict came to be and perhaps may come to end. Mr. Lawrence, it's a pleasure to have you back, sir. How's it going?
Fine, thank you, Italo. It's my pleasure to be on your program again.
Lawrence Pih was born in Shanghai in 1942. He moved to Brazil with his family in 1952, where he made a name for himself in the business world, leading the Moinho Pacifico Group, one of the largest wheat processors in Latin America. He studied philosophy in the United States, specializing in the works of Jean-Paul Sartre. After 50 years in business, he became a renowned expert in geopolitics and macroeconomics, focusing on relations between China and the United States.
Thank you very much for being with us. So I'd like to begin by asking the question, basically to give a framework as to how did the Israeli-Palestinian conflict begin? What's the key historical background that led us to this current crisis?
The issue is very sensitive, Italo, and very complex. Judaism started around 3,000 years ago. It is the first Abrahamic religion. And then, about 2,000 years ago, you have the creation and the development of Christianity. And about 1,400 years ago, we have the emergence of the Islamic religion. All these three religions are Abrahamic, and essentially they believe in the same God. And with the time, from a chronological point of view, Israel, or the Jewish religion, Judaism, was the first to appear. And the Christianity, as Holy Bible, the Old Testament, is basically a replica of the Torah, of the Jewish religion. So there's a lot of affinity between Judaism and Christianity. And then about 1,400 years ago, you have an emergence of a new religion, which is also Abrahamic, monotheistic. And this is the Islamic religion. So from a chronological point of view, the Judaism stands as the oldest religion of the three. The big problem, Italo, is that all these three religions embrace the Holy Land as their origin. And the Holy Land is in Jerusalem and the vicinities of Jerusalem, which is today territory of the Palestinians, which has been occupied by Israel. So what you have is a territorial dispute, actually. And the three religions have not coexisted peacefully over time. It is important to understand that religion is something that raises the emotions to a level that can lead to conflict. You have a holy land that's claimed by three religions, although of the same origin. However, there are significant differences as to how they see God and religions and how they practice the religion. So the Jewish people understands that they are the chosen people, God's chosen people, and they self-anointed themselves as God's chosen people. And somehow this is seen by the other two religions as perhaps you are beginning to classify faith. And the question is that why are the Jewish people the chosen people of God? And with the territorial dispute over the Holy Land, you have a complex mixture of religious faith and territorial occupation. Every religion wants to spread their faith, but Judaism is not the case. There are today approximately 18 million Jews. We have about 2 billion Muslims that are Islamists. And we have about 2.6 billion Christians. So you see that despite the fact that Judaism was the first religion to appear, first of the Abrahamic religions to appear, the amount of Jews in the world is negligible compared to Muslims and Christians. Now, the problem is that all religion wants to be more powerful, and the evangelizing of religion to spread into other continents and other peoples has also been the core of the missionary that we have seen in the past. We see that Christianity has spread across the world. Likewise, Islam, the Muslim world. So the larger the contingent of Christian, the more powerful the religion. And this is true with Christianity, and it is true with the Islamic religion, although the development of the Christians has surpassed by far the development of the Muslims insofar as world power is concerned and technology. So what you have is a conflict from a religious point of view, but at the same time of a way to acquire more power. And this is the core of the problem. The Jewish people claim that the Holy Land in Jerusalem and its vicinity is their rightful place. The Christians also regard this piece of real estate as their Holy Land, and likewise the Muslims of the Islamic religion. So essentially you have a territorial dispute. And because religion is so important in these three different ethnic populations, they will go to extreme, particularly the Israeli or the Jewish people and the Muslims, to assert their right on the Holy Land. So now we go back in history, and we see that the Jewish people were displaced again and again and again. And finally, in 1948, the State of Israel was established after the horrors that the Jewish people suffered in Europe during the Second World War, in particular, suffered under the hands of the Nazi regime. The Jewish people were never really accepted in Europe as one of their own. And there is a certain factor of envy also of the European people, because the Jews were more successful. They kept to themselves. They are very united. And that's understandable because they have suffered so much and for such a long time throughout history. And as a result, they never fully integrated or assimilated into the European societies. So the Europeans don't really consider the Jewish people Europeans. And as a result, they were ostracized. And because they were ostracized and they were always regarded as a foreign, in a sense, different people, there were discrimination against the Jewish people in Europe. And as a result, we saw the Second World War and the remorse that hung over the Europeans, particularly the German people, but also the French and the British. And they decided, actually, mainly Great Britain decided, that Israel can locate, or the state of Israel can be created in exactly the Holy Land. And the problem is that this land has been occupied by the Palestinians. So you have a territorial problem. And it's interesting to understand that the Jewish people insist that the land of Israel is their right. After the Second World War, the state of Israel was established. And so now you have the state of Israel in the middle of where the Palestinians are, Palestine. And so the geographic and territorial dispute starts all over again. Going forward, Israel in the beginning was a very small state. And they had territorial ambitions, of course, and they were not satisfied with the small piece of real estate that was the state of Israel. And Israelis and the Jewish population in general are very competent, very intelligent, and very hardworking. And their progress and their religious faith led them to want to expand territorially. If you compare of Israel of 1948, or even after the war in 1967 and today, Israel is occupying a lot more territory than before. So Israel, with its small population of about 8 billion people, would very much like to be a great power in West Asia. With such a small population, it is not easy to achieve this objective. However, the Jewish people are resilient, they're intelligent, they're hardworking, and they are extremely, extremely dedicated to the religious faith in asserting and securing the land of Israel. And the Palestinians, unfortunately, happen to be in their way. So you have this conflict. It's essentially a religious conflict, but also underlying territorial dispute. And we can even go further, a matter of which country will dominate West Asia. So you have all these problems. And the Jewish society, the Orthodox Israelis are more belligerent, and they are more assertive insofar as territory is concerned. They are moderate Jewish people, but today's Israeli government is run by the more conservative Jewish people, basically the Orthodox. This is a minority, and they do not participate in military action. They are basically involved in the religious life, and they are supported by the state of Israel. I would say the more secular Jews secular Israelis. And since they do not participate in military action, and their population growth is significantly larger than the more moderate Jewish people or Israelis. So from a demographic point of view, their political influence will only increase with time. There are families of the Orthodox Jewish people that have 6, 7 children, and the more secular and, I would say, less Orthodox Jewish people have much less children. The big problem is that this government, Netanyahu's government, is set to create a large Israel. And they use the argument that is for the security. It is not security, it is real estate. They want to make Israel an enormously powerful country in West Asia. And you can understand this from a point of view that the Jewish population in Israel is about 8 million. And around the world, it's about 10 million. So in total, there are about 18 million Jews in the world. Now, the Jewish diaspora is essentially in the United States of America. There are approximately 7 million Jewish people in the United States of America. So, United States of America, in some way, is a second Israel from a Jewish point of view. And they are very successful because they are intelligent, hardworking people. You might ask, well, the Jews are 18 million, the Muslims 2 billion. No,
Good
why
question.
would the Muslims fear the Jewish people or fear Israel? Well, if you go back to religion, you will see that a lot of evangelicals see securing the land of Israel as part of their mission. And there are about 600 million evangelicals in the world. Now, the Christian Zionists are the ones that support Israel virtually unconditionally. And the largest contingent of Christian Zionists are, again, in the United States of America. So, this is one of the reasons why we see that the United States of America supports Israel almost unconditionally. It is important to remember that there is a Jewish lobby in the United States of America funded by AIPAC, which is the Jewish diaspora in the United States of America. And they are extraordinarily well organized and wealthy. So their influence in Washington is enormous. But it's not only in the United States of America. This Jewish diaspora in other countries like UK, for example, is also very effective. And if you are a politician that is against Israel, they will fund your opponent with huge amounts of money to try to displace you. So this political power, which is basically funded by wealthy Jewish people in different countries, and they are extremely well organized, and it's important to understand that they are very, very intelligent. So what they want to control is the politicians and the media. The politicians to support Israel militarily, financially, whatever. And the media is to manufacture consent so that the population will see Israel and the Jewish people in a positive light. So now we are in 2025. Mr. Trump has negotiated a truce or ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, but it's not holding. And each side accused the other of breaching the ceasefire. From most of the media, I mean alternative media and independent media, but not the mainstream media, recognizes that Israelis have breached the ceasefire much more than Hamas. My personal belief is that the truce will not survive. And I believe that a new confrontation will come about. This time, it is possible that the United States of America will be dragged in a more forceful way. The fact that the United States bombed Iran a couple months ago to disable Iran's nuclear program, this next conflict, which I believe will come and soon, will be of a different order. We need to remember that Russia and Iran have a tight relationship, and we could even call it a strategic agreement of military equipment transfer, and in some ways even technology. So we all realize that Russia is right now involved in a major war in Europe, in Ukraine to be exact. But it is a nuclear power. And its tie with Iran is very tight. There are information that weapons like missiles and defense systems are being sent to Iran by not only Russia, but also China. There are no verifiable and objective report yet, but there are suspicions that this is ongoing. So the next conflict will be somewhat different from when the United States of America bombed the nuclear facilities of Iran. And ironically, nobody knows where the nuclear material is. And it is believed that the Iranians removed it before the bombing. So they are still capable of continuing their nuclear program. And what has become very clear to the Iranians, in my opinion, is that they need a nuclear weapon for their survival. So I think in the long run, they will probably again start the program. As the geopolitical chessboard shows movements, what the Iranians is looking at, like the whole world's looking at, is how reliable is the United States. And if it is reliable, how capable are they to meet their so-called obligations? And here is disconcerting for the West. Europe is in an awful situation economically, socially. Europeans today do not have the social network that they used to have. And many European countries take very seriously the role of the state. So we can even call it a social welfare state. The taxes are very high. The income distribution is far better than in the United States of America. But the European people, with years of war in Ukraine, has depleted their coffers. Now they will have to spend more on military. So it is a tug of war between butter and rifle. Either you spend in armament or you spend in social benefits for your people. And I have a feeling that the Europeans are a little tired of the war in Ukraine. And their ability to help Israel is very limited. At the same time, the United States of America is also depleting its military arsenal. And they have China to worry. In reality, they should not worry about China. But the war hawks in Washington sell the narrative that China is an aggressive country and wants to replace United States and destroy United States, which is very, very far from the truth. So the help that Israeli has had in the past may not be as robust in the future. And with the direct and indirect assistance of Russia and China to Iran, another military conflict between United States and Israel on one side, and Iran and its supporters on the other side, will be not as easy as the bombing that occurred in the past. Even a little country like Yemen, which is actually divided between Houthis, although the Houthis are the majority today, they can attack with missiles Israel. Now, if a small country can do that, can you imagine Iran with the support of Russia and indirectly China can do? So we all hope that there will not be another conflict. But in my view, it is inevitable. It will come, and it will come soon. So the situation in Gaza, as terrible as it is today, it is not going to improve. The truce will break down. Hostility will resume because the Israeli strategy and its objective is to remove every single Palestinian from Gaza and take its territory and rebuild it, all in line with the project of the greater Israel and the land of Israel. So to be optimistic, which I would very much like to be optimistic, on the ground, there are no facts that support or could encourage anybody to be optimistic. From today to 6 months down the road, there probably will be the resumption of conflict in Gaza. So generally speaking, Italo, this is my view, how it all happened from a religious point of view, territorial conquest, with the support of Zionist Christians, and here we are at this juncture. And I do
Yeah.
not see a promising end to this.
Yeah, well, your analysis is always very precise, Mr. P. So it's unfortunate because you're generally right. So it's sad to think that this conflict will resume and that the horrors that we saw basically will continue or in fact worsen. But since you tend to be right, unfortunately, perhaps that's what we will end up seeing, even though that's not what we hope for. And I'd have another question for you, sir. Do you believe that this conflict could, because in a broader framework, we have some of the same support. So the Ukraine war, we have, NATO, the United States, and the Western powers are supporting Ukraine, and Russia being supported by same team, China, Iran. So basically, you have these kind of two blocks being formed that are parallel in both of these conflicts. So do you believe that this conflict, specifically in Gaza and in Israel, could trigger broader geopolitical consequences, even the risk of a global war?
Well, the Gaza situation is very dangerous because if there is a open conflict between Iran on one side with the help of Russia and indirectly from China, and you have the United States with the help, or rather Israel with the help of the United States, I am quite sure that the Western allies of the United States of America will probably participate in helping the United States and Israel if the conflict widens. And then you will involve all countries, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Emirates, Jordan, Lebanon, and all these countries will be involved. The interesting thing is that the rulers of Saudi Arabia, of Jordan, Emirates, and all these smaller West Asian countries, the leaders they pay lip service to the Palestinians, but they don't do much in favor of the Palestinians. Their objective are personal wealth. And in Saudi Arabia, for example, the government delivers largesse to the population to keep them quiet. And if you take a poll in Saudi Arabia, I am sure that the population by far, maybe 95% are pro-Palestinians. But the kingdom pays lip service because their role is to do business. They have no interest in helping the Palestinians. In fact, many of these countries find the Palestinians just a headache. There's no solidarity. I'm talking about the leaders, not the people of these countries, which I'm sure are horrified with what's going on in Gaza today. It's basically about money and wealth and power. That's what's going on in West Asia today. The parallel with Ukraine, I would say that a conflict could erupt, could widen in Europe or West Asia. And it will be the same players, basically United States and their allies, against Russia and China. North Korea will obviously side with China and Russia. Iran will also side with them. Now, the global majority, insofar as Gaza is concerned, they are by and large in favor of the Palestinians and they condemn Israel. In the future, Italo, it is possible that we will see the ICC bring war crime charges against Israel. Now, it is complicated because Israel has a major enabler, which is the United States of America. You recall that when ICC began to investigate war crimes of Americans in Afghanistan, Mr. Trump sanctioned the prosecutors. So, and United States is not a signatory of ICC anyway, and neither is Israel. So they probably disregard any decision or ruling of ICC. But it is complicated because if ICC sanctions Israeli leaders or accuse them of war crimes and convict them of war crimes, they won't be able to travel anywhere in the world because they will be under the threat of arrest. Pretty much like what Bongbong Marcos Jr. of Philippines handed Duterte to the ICC. But there was a political plot. Bongbong Marcos' objective is to weaken the Duterte family's political influence in the Philippines. So that's another story. But just goes to show you that there will be problems for Israeli leaders. Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, all these more radical, and even Gallant, because he was the military leader. So things will continue the way it is and probably get worse. Now, if you are a Palestinian and you have seen the horror of the past couple of years, and you are a young man or woman that have lost most of your family, what would be your natural instinct? And this is one of the reasons why the IDF has embarked on a campaign to also eliminate the youth of the Palestinians in Gaza, because they do not want these children to grow up and want payback. If Israel cannot remove all the Palestinians from Gaza, then they will eliminate them. And the fact that they make it almost impossible for the aid to reach the people, Palestinians in Gaza, is genocide, of course. But I would be more realistic and call it mass extermination. So you can call it genocide, ethnic cleansing, apartheid, and mass murder. And this is exactly what's happening. It is unfortunate for the Jewish people around the world, and many Jewish people are against what's happening in Gaza. But they will suffer the consequences of anti-Semitism against the Jewish people as a whole. They will pay the price of what Netanyahu and his gang are doing now in West Asia. So unfortunately, we are in a situation that the Jewish people will pay the price of what's happening today by acts of the Israeli government. for decades to come.
And just to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here, because usually the Western media tends to frame this whole conflict as being Hamas's fault or that Israel is just defending itself. For example, Israel ceded control of the Gaza Strip in 2005 to the Palestinian authorities, and it seems like things have just gotten worse. So, despite all the horrors that we have seen, which I think a lot of the media does not claim to be genocide, or will not go that far or use that word. Why do you think that most of the Western media cannot see it for what it is? And is how much fault can we put on entities like Hamas, which people always claim use human shields, and and that Israel is a democracy surrounded by hostile actors? So how do we reconcile these two things with the horrors that we've seen, and in a sense to place some blame, I guess, on Hamas, which technically did initiate this conflict?
One simple answer: money.
Is
Money
it
does
always that
strange
simple?
things. Money does strange things. The Western media is transactional, totally bought by money. The Western media worries about their bottom line. They are companies. They have to answer to their shareholders. And if a media dares to challenge the Israeli narrative, first of all, they will begin to lose advertisement and support. Second, they will have difficulty in engaging with Washington because, as you remember, Mr. Netanyahu, which by many is considered a war criminal, received standing ovation in Congress. Now, that is really bizarre. So, for those that are naive and believe that there's righteousness and moral and ethics, I would advise you to take a look at what money can do.
Well, that's another sad fact, I think, of life. And just to broaden this a little bit more, how is China positioning itself on this issue? And could Beijing's approach diplomatically offer any credible alternatives to the US-led framework in the region?
China has bridged some rivalry in West Asia. For example, brokered an agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which were arch rivals, not to say that they were actually enemies at one point. But China does not meddle in foreign affairs of other countries. So I don't think that China is in a position, because of its policy, to be a broker in West Asia between Palestinians, and the Israelis. The Chinese government has repeatedly condemned Israel, but has not gone beyond that. China is more worried about its internal challenges and the containment policy that the Americans have embarked on against China. So they have a handful right now anyway. And if you look at what China has done in the past, let's say, 4 decades, they have not meddled in foreign affairs of other countries. Yeah? The era of propagating communism in Asia and elsewhere is long gone. And in fact, they were actually following the Russians then. But China began to take its own course. And its policy is non-intervention, no meddling in any other country's internal affairs. And state will not permit any other country to meddle in their internal affairs. So I don't see that China is in a position to be a broker. First of all, I do not believe that the Israeli would accept China as a broker, simply because China has voiced its position very clearly against what Israel is doing against the Palestinians. So Israelis will not find China as an quote unquote honest broker.
So I have another question for you, Mr. P, which is that do you think, because we have seen a repetition basically of these constant sparring year over year where, Hamas will fire rockets into Israel and then Israel will respond very disproportionately, and then killing, tens, hundreds of times more people than Hamas or any other of these Islamic organizations ever do. Why do you think that that keeps happening? And do you think that this time things are different, that the outrage that this conflict has created on the world stage is a little bit different than it has in the past? And could this lead to an eventual dissolution of the state of Israel as a Jewish state, as a religious and, political entity? Do you think that this time it was different? Because usually it goes overlooked. People see the horrors but don't do much. Do you think that there was anything different about this conflict specifically that might end up triggering that in the long run?
I think world's goodwill towards Israel and the Jewish people has eroded significantly. After the Second World War, the entire world embraced the Jewish people, and rightly so. Now it's pretty much the contrary. I believe that if you take a poll today on world population, probably 90% condemn Israel's actions in Gaza. But as I said before, you have a large contingent, enormous, of Christian Zionists. Yeah? They are probably about 100 million. They see as their mission to secure the land of Israel, and particularly the United States as the largest contingent of Christian Zionists, and most of them evangelicals. So, and they are politically a very powerful group, no? This group supported Mr. Trump's re-election last year, and Mr. Trump won legitimately. He won the popular votes, he won the electoral votes, and he is rightfully the President of the United States of America. So, so long as you have this support from the Christian Zionists and the evangelicals, and therefore the United States of America, and the power of Israeli lobby, Israel will survive. Because Israel will not survive only if the United States is totally destroyed, and that is an impossibility. Despite of clear signs of U.S. decline, but no matter what happens, the United States will still be a very powerful country, extraordinarily rich in natural resources, and geographically privileged. The United States has no enemy on its borders, has no challenge, no threat in its borders. They fish in the Atlantic and fish in the Pacific. And if Canada, which may be the 51st state or not, I'm not sure. By the way, we should pay attention to Quebec and Alberta. Jokingly speaking, of course, that we might even see a move towards Quebec being the 51st state and Alberta being the 52nd state. So the northern border is not a problem, and the southern border is even less. So United States is privileged, and therefore it will continue to be a great power for decades to come. And so long as the United States of America is powerful, there will be support for Israel. So despite of the 2 billion Muslims may not see eye to eye with Israel, Israel will continue to exist. Maybe they will temper down their territorial ambitions. Maybe they would like to coexist with the Arab countries in West Asia. That would be the sensible thing to do, because I have many Jewish friends which I am very, very fond of, and many of them share with me the anguish that they feel there is an increase in anti-Semitism, and they're paying a price for something that's done by the Israeli leadership, and which, by the way, they are against. So it's very painful to see that these people, innocent people, that has a moral level, an ethical level, significantly higher than Netanyahu and his gang in Israel, to suffer the consequences for what this gang is doing.
Yeah, it's always sad to see hatred spreading, and I know that's something you within your own ethics is something that you, I'm sure, agree with me. And it's unfortunate to see innocents, suffer for the mistakes of others. And I have a final question to you, sir, because our time is up. Unfortunately, we won't have all the time in the world. But this is more of a hypothetical question. Do you think that, or what do you think what would happen to the state of Israel if it lost even, let's say, 50% of the monetary support it gets from the United States? What would you think would the consequences be, territorially, politically, geopolitically, economically? How would they handle it? Would it be possible?
Well, actually, the Israeli economy is suffering today. You know that there are a lot of Israelis that are leaving Israel, and the economy is obviously suffering because many Israeli young men are being called to serve the country. And so, and Israel is only an 8 million population. It's a very small country. And so the Israeli economy is already suffering. To what extent the US help would make a difference? It most certainly will. But I do not believe that US will decrease its support for all the reasons that I have enumerated in our talk. So I believe that the United States will unconditionally continue to support Israel financially and militarily, because there is a very powerful group of the Jewish diaspora. And also you have many millions of evangelical and Christian Zionists that want to support Israel. So I do not believe that there will be significant decrease in financial and military support of Israel by United States of America.
Well, Mr. Lawrence, well, I hope we can sit together again and have another conversation. It's always a pleasure to pick your brain and get your opinion. And I'd like to thank you very much. And hopefully we'll chit chat soon. And I'll always have more questions to bring to you, sir. And I really appreciate your time.
Most certainly. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.